A good man is a man who knows how to contain. A good masculine man is a safe man, a grounded man, a present man. And we definitely need more of that.
How would you define what a nice guy is versus what a good man is?
Basically, Mr. Nice Guys don't really know themselves, don't know their strength, don't know their power, don't know their more shadowy side. And these are not men necessarily people who trust. I would say this is the first step, to know yourself, to ask for help.
It's such a pervasive idea that we have to do it all ourselves. We can't let anyone see us needing help. Help is a form of weakness.
This is not a new concept, but I think it's being reborn in a new way, which we call men's work. I think men are ready to really find a different way how to be a man in this world, because this way that we've been walking just doesn't work anymore.
So welcome listeners back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers, and today I have with me a wonderful guest, a man who's worked with men in depth, worked with men in person, in events, in festivals, and really understands the depths of what's going on with men, what they struggle with, how they want to show up better in the world, and what gets in the way of that. So today I have with me Nemanja. How are you doing, Nemanja?
Hello, David. Thank you for the invite. I'm doing well. It's a nice, finally sunny day here in the Netherlands, which is not always the case. But today is a good day and I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic, man. Awesome. I thought I'd dive in and actually get a bit more about you. You know, I've followed you for a number of years, but actually I don't know that much about your personal journey. So I'd love to know, what was your journey to do the work that you do today?
I would say for me, as for many men, I came to this work through reaching the edge of not being able to move on forward in the way that I have. So for me, pain was the grand initiator into this work. Personal pain, family pain, the country in which I grew up with war, that type of pain, and so on and so on. So at some point, that pain could not be anymore avoided. And I simply felt it's time for me to ask for support, even though that was the most difficult thing for me to do in that moment, to ask for help. I knew it was time. Otherwise, the direction where I was going through was basically becoming like the guys in my neighborhood, which were stealing cars, selling drugs, and so on. So if I haven't found what I found in the form that I found it as support, I would probably stray away like all the other men that I knew back then. So, but I would say pain was the grand initiator, and yeah, it was time to do something about it.
It's
Yeah.
quite a common experience of men. We reach a kind of pain level of pain internally, whether it's relationally, whether it's with how we're showing up, and maybe it's I've had men I've spoken to where the level of internal pain they're experienced that they don't always notice actually as pain. We don't always notice it as pain. We might think it's something else, or we see some of the symptoms or the byproducts of it and think that is the problem in our lives and we have to solve that. And then the journey kind of weaves us down, and then we eventually get to the kind of kernel of pain that's causing our life to not be in the place we want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something I still see nowadays with the guys that I work with a lot. Something needs to happen more often than not for men to ask for help. And usually it's something big: divorce, breakup, losing a job, bankruptcy. So usually it's something grand. It's not often small. And I would rather prefer that men come when they are also doing well, or they're doing okay. And so we don't wait for that collapse to happen, the crash, so that would be my ideal, which I know it's not the case. And I had to do the same. I had to crash before I had to actually call the towing service and ask for help. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that thing about asking for help is it's such a pervasive idea, for us men, that not to ask for help, to do it all ourselves. It's kind of the shadow aspect of the lone wolf,
Yep.
that we have to do it all ourselves. We can't let anyone see us needing help. Help is a form of weakness, or even the fear that when we ask for help, we're going to be rejected.
True. True. And I think it's slowly changing. I think the paradigm of, again, I speak of individual pain, what got me started, and the men that are around me, again, individual. Yet when you zoom out and see now the collective where men are, compared to even 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it's reaching a point where something has to snap collectively also, as it was individually, for things to change. And I do think it is that point now, and we see a lot of men's group just popping up all over the world suddenly, which is great. And I think men are ready to really find a different way how to be a man in this world, because this way that we've been walking just doesn't work anymore. I do think the collective is slowly awakening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I see it, I remember when I first started doing this sort of work, even kind of 10 years ago,
Yeah.
when I would say to someone, oh, I'm going to a men's group or I'm going on a men's retreat, it would
Yeah.
be looked with this kind of side eye of like,
Mhm.
what's going on in this place? What are you going to be doing? Like, is it something shady? Is it like some pickup artist thing? Like, are you going to get drunk? Whereas now, if I talk to a stranger that I meet at a party or something like that, and I'm like, oh, this is the work I do, or I was at a men's circle or something like that, I'm met with like, oh, my friend goes to that, or my partner goes to that, or I was reading something about that in a newspaper. It's not met with suspicion, it's met with, I wish more men were doing this sort of thing.
Yeah. And if you look at history, men have been coming together in different forms throughout different cultures. And I used to live in the Amazon, in the jungle, with a tribe, and that is far, far from any civilization. Like when I say far, I really mean far, which still operate in those ways. They still, as a community, have traditions which exist hundreds, if not thousands of years, that men still have those spaces when they go or hunting or coming together for discussions, conversations, which I witnessed. So this is not a new concept, but I think it's being reborn in a new way, which we call men's work. It's something we always did around the fire, around whatever form. But now we're like, okay, how does the new form look like to meet the modern needs of a man? And men's work it's it's still finding, I would say, its ways into our society. And like, how does it look like? What does it mean? What is it for? And I'm really happy. I'm really happy from what I'm seeing, and I do still have a hope that it goes a bit faster. There's a part of me which is a bit. There's a high part that's me very optimistic, but there's a part of me which is a bit perhaps in pessimism at times. Like, shit, we need to speed this up for different reasons. What we see around the world happening. So yeah.
You need to speed it up, and we need to kind of move it up the echelons of society in many ways. Like there's a lot of men, as you said, there's a lot of men's work that's catering for the modern man, from all over the world. There's so many organizations, and it can feel sometimes like it's kind of just, it's not quite getting into the seats of power, and raising up to that level that is where it's really, really needed.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if I used to have a fantasy of, imagine each government official needs to do, before he gets into the position of power, he needs to do or a men's retreat or an ayahuasca retreat. I don't know, something, at least something, so he can, see his own self in what it is and really understand the position he holds, that it impacts people and impacts society, impacts culture, because as we see it now around the world, positions of power, they're abused. And these are men who, you don't know their history, you don't know their trauma, you don't know anything about them. And you put them into that position, trusting they will do a good job. And history again has shown that is often not the case. So I would love to see more men really getting to know their power and also getting to know their shadows, which I think is essential for anyone being in power. And therefore, this is why I just don't trust people in those big governmental positions. I just don't have the trust to allow myself to be led by people like that. So yeah.
because they haven't really looked at the things that are under the hood that are driving them, the shadows, the different archetypes that are alive in them, that are causing them to desire power, to abuse their power, to want to manipulate. They just think that's how it is. This is who I am, or this is how the world is.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I meant when I used to live in this tribe. The chief, his name is Matsini, and he's a proper chief. And in that position, it took the community over the years to see him in his growth, to see where he was lacking certain elements before they put him in that position. And he, of course, did a lot of different, especially plant medicine there is very normal. So he did a lot of work, let's call it plant medicine shadow work, and to one day be like, okay, now this is my position. So he went through a specific process, I would say initiation into manhood and so on, before he got there. So something in me was like, okay, I can trust this man. So he was my mentor, he was my guide in that moment. And so these are the people I can trust. So I've seen both. Also in my own culture where I grew up I grew up in Serbia, so we had war, embargo, we had still to this day people who are abusing power in so many ways, and police that abuse power. I've been stopped in the 90s especially. I remember I've been stopped millions of times on the street by police and harassed and abused and so on. So I've seen the shadow and I've seen the good. And when I say I saw the good, I see what man is capable when he's ready to step into that role from a different place. So I want to stay optimistic. I want to see the good in men no matter what. I'm doing my best. Yeah.
Well, I feel you there. And I want to change direction a little bit. To the we talked a little about before. There was an Instagram post I saw you speaking about, and it connects slightly to what we were talking about there, around this idea that there's a very well-trodden idea coming from Dr. Robert Glover around nice guy syndrome. And, I was saying before we jumped on that, I think, men who are listening to the listeners, the men listening to this, you would probably look at yourself and ask, and if someone said, are you a good man? You would say yes. I think most men would say they're good men. But I believe, and I'd love to know your thoughts on this as well, that actually maybe more men kind of slip into that, maybe on the spectrum of the nicer guy than a good man. So I guess the question for you is, how would you define what a nice guy is versus what a good man is?
Well, what the book Mr. Nice Guy did is kind of put a name to something we had in our society, especially the last few decades, that, let's call it a syndrome amongst men of becoming the nice guy, which means, in short, definitions of people pleasing, not really speaking his truth, in the fear he possibly will be abandoned or judged or, simply exiled from whatever form of way. Which, if you look at the kids, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and she's completely dependent on us. So often I notice sometimes patterns in her. I slowly start to see she's building little patterns of how she can win our approval, which in this age she needs anyways. She needs touch, she needs safety. But I'm slowly noticing the things that I do might affect her to slowly start creating patterns of approval, to do stuff for us to approve, to get our attention, to get in this. So if I look at a child, just think of someone who is in their 20s, 30s, more often than not, they have the same patterns in relationships, in family, in business environments. So people often shrink themselves, contract, deform to be accepted by others instead of discard and so on. So we create all these different tactics of survival, and Mr. Nice Guys has many, and this is one of them. And so often in relationships, the Mr. Nice Guy would avoid conflicts. So he doesn't want to have conflict. So he will say, yes, dear, yes, this, that, instead of really saying his truth, like, I'm actually a no for this. this does not align with my values and also what I believe this family's values should be. And in this society, I would say also Mr. Nice Guys are far more dangerous than good men, good, strong men. Because I see it, I saw it many times in my practice where Mr. Nice Guys would often become, over time, because of what they suppress, would they eventually, that will leak out in other forms, physical aggression or passive aggression, and so manipulation, so on and so on. So basically, Mr. Nice Guys don't really know themselves, don't know their strength, don't know their power, don't know their more shadowy side. And these are not men necessarily people would trust. So they try to be nice to conform to the environment, to get what they want. Okay? Good men would speak their truth, even if they have to stand alone for that. They will not compromise their values for no one. That doesn't mean they're not caring. That doesn't mean they're not loving. That just means this is who I am. This is what I stand for. And I'm not going to move. So they know their strength. They know their physical strength. They know their emotional, mental strength, their spiritual side. And they're truly powerful, strong men. And these are men that people would then, of course, trust. And so these are the kind of, in short, a difference which I see a lot of men today struggle. You know, I can see it, probably you also see it in your practice, like with relationships, like it's a very common theme that occurs, and that eventually creates resentment in relationships, kills the polarity, makes the woman not trust the man, because as much as she would, you know, a lot of women would say, hey, I would love that my man does what I would love him to do, but deep down, no, she would actually love a man to say no, from a loving place, but to say no, it's a no. Does that make sense? A short version of that?
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I definitely resonate with that. Like a woman will say, you know, and there's so many layers, like, because I work with some women sometimes as well, and they'll say to me, like, oh yeah, I want a man who can not just know what I want, but like understand me and, you know, do the things that are right. And I won't necessarily say I want him to do what I want him to say, but it's in there. But equally, it's in there. But equally, a woman doesn't want a man who's going to say yes to everything, knowing that he doesn't really want to do it, plus knowing that there's going to be this resentment afterwards that's going to come out. You know, it is that part, as you said, about like speaking a truth and being a no and being an honest no. Like, hey, do you want to come with me to the supermarket? No, I don't want to come with you to the supermarket. You might go, I'd really love you to come to the supermarket. You know, we could have a really good time together, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe that could change his answer because suddenly there's an invitation to deeper love. But, you know, as you said, the nice guy would just be a yes. Like, oh, you want to go and do that? Why don't we go do that thing? But underneath, there's an attempt to, like you said, get his needs met at a later date, like this, as you know, as Robert described in his book, this covert contracts, you know, this, I'll do this for you now, so you're going to do this thing for me later, but I'm not going to tell you that that's what I'm doing.
And again, this is just a mirror of also, you know, the bigger picture, what's also happening, I would say now globally. And, you know, lately I've been thinking even more than ever, I would say, about, you know, there's a personal work that I do with men. There's the transpersonal in maybe smaller groups and bigger groups. And there's the collective. And at the moment, I'm looking a bit more at the collective. And I would say there's a lot of Mr. Nice Guy state of mind in our collective where, and we see it now without going too far into the government and the politics and everything, but I do see it there too, where men are struggling to say no. Like also to the bigger forces of this world. You're struggling to say, no, this is not okay. Like I had enough of this. You know, otherwise you see politics, this is fighting, they're attacking these guys, they're attacking these guys, government fighting. But like I see less and less people who say no, it's enough. And again, if you cannot say no to your own partner or in your own life, it's very hard to say no to the bigger thing out there. So I'm also passionately quite about that. I'm a no to where are we going in the collective in this way. I'm a no to what you want to impose to me. I'm a no to, and I'm very open to speak about this. What happened 2020? I'm a no. What happened? I was a no to all whatever they was telling me I should do. I was a no, and I'm not compromising that. No, I don't care. Even if they put me, they lock me up. I don't care. I'm a no. So I think this is something is a bit lacking in our society. That clear. Where is my yes? Where is my no? Where does it come from? Does it come from fear, or does it come from my truth? Like this is, I'm not fucking compromising this.
Yeah. And that's a great point, because we don't always look at it, that kind of nice guy syndrome from that. We look at politicians who say, even to their ideologies, they're saying yes to things within their kind of ideological camps, whether it may be that they don't intrinsically believe in or agree with, but to keep their status and their place and even their seat in parliament or the house, whatever it is, they go along with it because they are out to get something for themselves at a later date. And this is at like a kind of political level. You can see the same thing at work, where it's kind of either a loss of value or a disconnection from our values and meanings in life.
Yeah, and hence the result eventually that festers and becomes, unfortunately, where we are now in some way or form. And I did I stopped long time ago to try to save the world. That was my idea in my 20s, but in my 30s I was like enough, and then now in my 40s I solely focus on, which I do believe is, for me at least, the solution is to support men individually and to support relationships. If that is strong, the family unit, it will literally ripple across their whole environment, their families, their work, their wherever they go, it will ripple across space and time. So for me at the moment, this is the solution, to really strengthen families, strengthen men and women together. And from there, they build communities. I saw it so many times. They build communities, they build projects, and this I feel will impact the world eventually. So this is my work at the moment.
Yeah. No, I really agree. I think that we all want to change the world. And I also think people have a gift to change the world in different ways. Some people I've met have that way of, they have a very corporate mindset or a corporate experience, and they go into companies and shift leadership at that sort of level, or culturally in companies, and bring some of the ideas that we talk about here, no's, yeses, values, purpose and meaning into that level. And I think I feel there's a real movement in the world now. And I think it's probably been there for years, right? But you can only, you often only really realize things in the moment of this shift culturally at so many levels, especially targeting men, as we kind of touched on, for them to start to kind of stand up. And a question kind of comes to me, and it's related to the nice guy stuff, actually. It's around agency, because I think the narrative of men, one of the narratives, because there is so many, one of the narratives about men is us being powerful and, doing what we want. And I be really honest, I don't see this in the men that I work with. I see men really lacking in agency. And this is directly tied to the kind of nice guy, isn't it? The lack of agency that he feels for himself, or ability to advocate for his own needs. Where do you see this kind of show up for a man in both his life, but also inside his kind of relationship as well?
Well, I get a lot of, in my practice, I have two type of men. One is the nice guy we were talking about. So a lot of men come this feeling not in control of their lives, and starting from their own thoughts, their own emotions, their own, daily habits of just not being able to get shit done, basic things. I had men who cannot literally get out of their beds in the morning and do nothing. They would just stay in bed, and whether it's depression, whether it's feeling lost, whether it's something else, but literally not being able, if you give them an assignment, just get up and make your bed, even that becomes a problem. So for me, I would often, because of that, start working with them on their inner world, inner state, like really gaining back, as you say, the agency of, okay, to begin with, what am I actually feeling at this moment? Because it's very hard to change something you don't even know you have. So this is something that I call tracking. Can you just at least track what's happening in your body? Can you track, okay, example, where do I feel tension in this moment? Okay, it's a little bit of shoulders, a bit of pressure in my chest. Okay, what is the emotion behind that? In my chest, I feel a bit of sadness, for example. Okay, what comes up when you connect to that sadness? And then they start to see stories, they start to see things that might be bothering, which they didn't even know they had until that moment. So for me, it's very hard for them to regain agency if they had no freaking idea what's going on. They just feel something is off. So one of them is on a somatic level, energetic level, mental, emotional, whatever you want to call it, to regain and bring more consciousness, more awareness, what's actually going on. And then we take the steps. Okay, now that we know what is going on, seeing the cause, we create a plan. Of course, we meet all these things if they need to be met. But after that, okay, what is the plan? Or what is the desire? Like, why do you want to do this? I want to regain agency of my life. I want to feel confident. I want to be clear. I want to be a good man, as you say in the beginning. Like, okay, what does it mean to be a good man? I want to be there for my family. I want to be of service. So there is a path to get there. But I would say to start with, you first need to know what is going on. And a lot of men are disconnected from their own kind of self-knowing. Again, especially emotions. For men is often like, ooh, emotions. Like, I don't want to go there. That's not relevant today. And that builds up brick after brick. And that's what I said in the beginning. Eventually something has to snap and crack. And ideally he doesn't go that far. But as you know, many men don't get that opportunity. And, even during this call, what is it now, 27 minutes we have, how many men lost their lives to suicide? What is it? I think it's around 10-ish.
Wow.
So I would say this is the first step, to know yourself, to ask for help. And if you know men, which my men's group does, we know men who don't ask for help, but we know they need help. We go to their door. We go to their house. We clean their house. We talk to them. We do whatever is necessary so they feel and see like, oh shit. This is how it looks like to be supported, to be in a brotherhood, to be cared for, and massive shifts happen. So something has to change, and these are the few ways we can do it. So,
and when they start to adventure into this inner world, this emotional landscape, what do you find? What do you see they commonly stumble across that's going on underneath, whether that's emotionally, whether that's mentally?
well, there's a few things. I think one of the common ones I see lately, especially, is a lot of men are tired of wearing masks. I think literally those words would come out. Like, I'm tired of wearing this mask. I'm tired of playing this role, whatever the role is. And when they finally acknowledge they're even playing that role, they often have a moment of collapse. They're just breaking into tears, just like really allowing that to come out finally, because some of them were playing that role for 40, 50, 60 years. And they finally realize, hey, this was not me. I was playing a role to be accommodating the personal, the family, the work, the society. Like, who am I actually? Like, who am I? Who am I under this role? And many of them have no idea. And that is painful. That is really, truly painful. And it's sometimes for me painful to also see, but I know the place. I done the same. I know the path. I walked it. So I think this is one of those things that men realize, like, oh shit, I'm playing a role. And it's very, very scary to see that, but also to even acknowledge that to yourself and others. And even more scary to be ready to change that. And men who often come into this line of work, when they do start to change and put in the work, what becomes even more interesting, the people around them, especially families, they start to get scared because this is not the man they know. So often the wives get like, ooh, is he still here? Is he still present? Is he gonna leave me, or he's gonna still be here? Is he still gonna be a father, and so on and so on. So when the men suddenly wake up from this role, they change very quickly, and that requires some time and integration for everyone around him too.
Because everyone around is used to them fulfilling that role, and maybe they like them fulfilling that role. They need them to fulfill that role. That role makes them feel important. That role makes them feel safe. And then his new, letting go of this role creates instability, can create uncertainty. Even if his change will be good for everyone, in the moment when it starts to occur, it can be a destabilizing force, not just to him, but also to the people in his life.
Yeah. And this is where we kind of full circle back from Mr. Nice Guy to a good man. When he starts switching from that Mr. Nice Guy, and this is one of those parts where he played a role where he suddenly is like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to live in this way. This is what I'm going to do from now on. Let's say this switch to a good man. He really needs to hold the line of that. And often, men get tempted to go back into their old habits. The environment starts pressuring them to do so. And there, the brotherhood, the mentors come into the front, very important to help him hold the line. Hold the line with love. It's not like I'm disconnecting and I don't care what anyone else thinks. It means I'm holding the line. And I'm doing this because this is good for me, but it's also good for all of us. I know you're scared, but I'm here. I'm still here, but I'm holding the line.
Yeah. And most men have never had that sort of support in their lives. They don't know it. It can feel, I've seen it for myself and experienced myself, especially to someone who, suffers from the kind of nice guy syndrome. It can feel aggressive to have someone hold you accountable to the man that you say you want to be. It can feel like they're aggressing on you there. You can even really interpret as someone is being mean to you or being horrible to you, but actually it's a really beautiful type of love and care and support that we are not used to in our day and age.
No, and it's usually because if a man had a father, if the father was a bit harsh and abusive, he didn't bring that sword with love, it will come out. Any later on type of support that is a bit more direct, even if it's meant good and communicated well, a lot of men will still contract and see it as a threat. I mean, women too, of course. I work with a lot of women too, where I see they grew up with a father who was a bit more harsh, aggressive, and when they get into the relationship, when a man is truly good and truly wants the best for her and leading well and communicating well, she often still sees it as a threat. So we see it, a lot of women say we want good men, but at the same time, they have a history with not good men. So when a good man does show up, it's very hard often for a woman to trust him, to truly allow herself to be held by a man like that. So often I would see women still, they would push back or attack or defend or whatnot. There's many scenarios. So it's men who are also relearning how to be with other men who are safe, but also women too. Women too.
Yeah. No, I see the same. We're not used to it. We're not used to people either being cruel, not this simple. It's a simplistic example. We're used to people who are kind of mean and cruel, or we're used to people who are just nice and nice people, even though that's niceness can be manipulative. So when someone shows up and who they are, good and they are in their values and they're clear in their communication, that lands, that, like you said, it just lands as almost more towards the area of threat and cruelty, especially in our society. And I'm from the UK, where we are ridiculously polite all the time, unnecessarily. So when you meet someone who is from a nation maybe where people are more direct, like my partner, she's Swedish, right? So they're a lot more direct in their speech. It lands for us as like someone being rude or mean, or like uncourteous. Like that's just a small example of it, not even a relational one.
Yeah, I think I would say like this: for a person who carries a wound or a trauma, more often than not, that person will find safety in familiar hell than unfamiliar heaven. And this is one of the reasons a lot of relationships nowadays fail. Because even when a really good person you always wanted to have shows up in your life, so many different systems and strategies of survival kicks in for a man or a woman, where they unconsciously sabotage that relationship and just start doing things which don't make sense. But the nervous system doesn't know better yet. I say often to women, when you truly meet a man, see the best in him. Truly practice to see the best in him, even when he's not doing things perfectly. He fucks up. He would say something maybe a bit more harsh. Practice to see the best in him. Always assume he wants the best for you. Because due to the society we live in and the reputation men have at the moment as a collective, we need more of that. We need more people to see the best in men.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important aspect, that to see the best in men, because it's easier to not see that. Yeah. And a question that comes through is this idea around anger, actually. I imagine with many of the men that you've worked with, because as men, we kind of grow up in this idea that anger is bad. Anger is negative and bad, and we should stay away from that. And that's particularly true for the nice guy. And I'm curious, what becomes the relationship for the good man? What's a good man's relationship like to his anger?
Well, for most men, what I see is that anger is often power suppressed. It comes out in that form, yet deep inside, it's actually his longing to speak out what he wants to say, which he's not been saying. It's his longing to live in the way he wants to live. So eventually it becomes a frustration. It becomes something he's been holding for so long, like a little boiler that comes to the edge, and at some point it has to erupt. If you don't release the fuse at least a little bit, just a little bit of gas. So for a lot of men, anger is the answer to a lot of situations because they've been holding back for so long. So it just kind of has to come out, and unfortunately comes out sideways. So for a good man, anger is, I would say, something a man would use to, let's call it, transmute that energy. It's basically just energy. It's just an energy in your body. He directs it into something more constructively, his purpose, his trainings, and so on and so on. I do the same because I have a lot of power. I'm also from the south of Europe, so we are a bit feisty by nature. And I know I have a lot of, especially my solar plexus, I know there's a lot of energy. And if I don't take care of that energy and channel it in different ways, it will eventually become a bit of like a pressure cooker, and it might sometimes come as a harsh anger. And I necessarily don't see anger as something wrong as long as I don't bleed all over it other people. So I always do my best to reprogram that and really direct it in a more constructive way. But I'm not avoiding it. I'm not avoiding that part of myself, which is part of men. We have testosterone. We have, men's levels of aggression are higher than in women. That's why we have more men in jail and so on and so on. but also because of my martial arts history, I know how to use that energy, and I know that it's a good thing if I know how to use it. And I often use the analogy of a sword, like all men have a sword under their belt. So the question is what you're going to do with that sword. And that sword represents your power. So that means you cannot avoid it. You cannot hide it away. You cannot throw it away. It's always going to be there. So what are you going to do with it? So Mr. Nice Guy would avoid it, and eventually he would cut everyone else because he didn't even know how to use that. A good man will know how to wield. He'll practice. He will really put a lot of time and effort to know his strength, to know how sharp that sword is. And he will use it to protect, to build, to do good with that. So I prefer men who know their strength and know their power versus the men who are avoiding that.
It's a really powerful analogy with the sword, even if we combine it with anger, in that, like you said, the nice guy will hide it, suppress it, pretend it's not there, and in the moments where it becomes uncontrollable, you'll kind of flail it around, in that way that passive aggressiveness can sometimes be, but also like explosive anger. Because I think that's for me, one of the reasons why we're so scared of anger in society is because the examples we've seen is uncontrolled anger, like explosive anger, which really goes into kind of rage, which is not the kind of anger that comes through when we see an injustice in the world and we're like, I'm a no to this, and it's a strong no, I'm going to do something about it. Or we see something happening in front of us that we're like, this is wrong. I engage the anger I feel at what I'm seeing in my eyes and use that to step forward to do something, not in a way that I'm kind of like completely overcome by the anger and it has control of me, but that isn't, as you described, an energy that is there, but an energy that gives us, you describe it so well with the transmutation. It's like, it's an energy that's there, and I use it to channel to take action consciously in this moment.
Yeah, I think Jordan Peterson said it well, which I like. I know a lot of people were criticizing him for that. He said, become a monster. He said, become a monster. And people are like, what do you mean? He said men should allow themselves to be monsters, to allow that part of them to come out and then learn to control it. Because, Friedrich Nietzsche was talking about the same thing, which is we all have this part of ourselves, which is like also Freud was talking about shadow. It's the same concept. We all have that shadow within ourselves. By shadow, I mean the part of us that can kill, destroy, harm in all sorts of ways. So instead of casting it away, why not getting to know that part of yourself? Why not embrace that part of yourself instead of pushing it away? And this is also why we see a lot of, I would say, problems in the world, because a lot of people don't know that part of themselves. They believe, when you say a good man or a good woman, like, yeah, we're all good. No. We have it, but we also have the equal capacity to do harm. So by avoiding the harm part, believing we're all just good, a lot of those type of people, if you look at history, have done the biggest harm in this society, because they don't know that part, and that's the sword I'm talking about. So I always prefer also working with clients, which is, I know, very scary for many, is to get to know your shadows, really get to know your shadow. Even play it out. Play out the worst, nastiest, scariest part of yourself, because then you know what's on the table. You put it all on the table like, oh shit, I'm capable of this. I would trust that person much more than the person who's kind of pretending it's not there. Yeah.
Because the person that knows it and they've seen it, they've touched it, they have the awareness then that when it starts, if it maybe starts to creep out in their everyday life, they can catch it because they have awareness, because they've had an experience of it. Whereas the man who suppressed it, which is the predominant way that I think we're taught to about the darker aspects of our psyche, the parts that want to dominate, that want to hurt, that want to take over, that want to control, we're told that they're bad and wrong, and we're like, I must keep them down. And then in the darkness of the darkness of night, you know, those little things leak out, whether that's the porn that we watch, whether it's how we treat our partner when no one is around and no one's looking, or the way we talk to people at work, again, maybe often when no one's looking or no one's around. It's to do this. Those are the places that this sort of behavior starts to leak out, because we have no contact with it in a way where we've created a little bit of acceptance, that acceptance, acknowledgement, like, this is also, there's a part of me that could, tear a man apart with my bare hands if I, and I acknowledge that is there. So when I do start to get angry at someone in front of me, I can see the signature of it coming through, this savage aspect of me, and I can go, oh, that's not what I want to bring in this moment.
Yeah, this is why a lot of relationships, when the conflict hits, when you get triggered by whatever is going on, a lot of responses, more often than not, is attack, defense, freeze, fawn. So we have all these strategies which we believe is our right in that moment, to because we are right, the other person is never, is wrong, blah blah blah. We have all these strategies how to keep ourselves safe, because deep down we just feel very scared, and then these shadows really creep in. Then all this passive aggressive or directly very aggressive, we start to do all these things, and weaponize what we know about the other, and so on, because we yet don't know those shadows when they creep in. And those shadows, I mean, with all the rights, they are there also to protect us often. So that is also to be acknowledged. And again, full circle back, like, we have those parts. We can pretend we don't have them, but we all are capable of the biggest evils in the world. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but we are. Every single person is capable of. They gave this example, and during the Second World War in Nazi Germany, they say, if you were to go back in time, who would you be? Would you be the German soldier who works in Auschwitz, or would you be the Anne Frank who saved people? And a lot of people say, like, I would be Anne Frank. No, you would not. The percentage and the possibility that you are going to be Anna would be this big. You would probably be one of the school teachers that eventually became, in the concentration camp, the guard, which basically explains the human nature. We all hold that dark side within. It's just a matter of the circumstances, the space, the family, the environment, the society, that will create the conditions for that part to come out or not. So that's what I mean by, for me, deep shadow work is exactly this. Know your deepest, shadowest part. Know your monster, and then learn to control it. And these people are, what I would say, safe people that we need more in this world.
Yeah, because you and talking about personal experiences, when you learn you touch the aspect of you that desires control, for example, to control others or your environment. When you dance with that part of you, you know what it feels like when it starts to arise. You know the energetic signature.
Yeah.
You know what it feels like where, I've skipped another example where, you're in conflict with your partner and you're about to counterattack. They've said something to you about your behavior, something you're doing or not doing. And when you've touched a part of you that just wants to win or just wants to fight all the time, you can feel that signature that rises in your body. And you can go, I notice what's happening here, and I'm just going to take a step back. I'm going to take some breath, because that's not what I want to bring through. Whereas the average person, or, back to the nice guy's never done this sort of work with himself. He's just spent his whole life trying to suppress anything that isn't going to get him what he wants in this moment. And when that energy arises with enough force, he has no practice of kind of control or taming it, and it just leaks out or explodes out.
Yeah. And this is why I mentioned tracking, which is when you get triggered, for example, me or anyone, can you in that moment notice what's happening in you? Because when we get triggered, the focus often goes, spotlight goes to the partner. Yeah, what they're doing wrong, what they're not doing or doing. Yeah. So if the person can, in the moment of the trigger, literally basic things, which are the most difficult ones, notice your breath. Is it shallow or is it slow and wide? How is your body? Do you feel any tension in your body? Where do you feel it? which emotions are coming up. So if a person can just track that and even communicate that with a partner, it already resolves, I would say, 60% of the problem in the moment. So then I know what's going on within you. Like, oh, this is happening within you. Okay, now I know. Now we can meet that. But if you don't communicate that, if you don't even know what's going on, you're gonna attack. You're gonna be blazing fire. So yeah, this is a very common thing in relationships that I see.
Yeah, very common, very common. A question we touched on earlier about kind of some of the traits of the good man.
Yeah.
I'm curious about some of the traits of a good man that the nice guy is scared to touch, scared to embody.
Yeah. Well, one of them is taking responsibility of your own behavior, your own state, your own words, your own life, and then taking responsibility of your environment, of your partner, your kids, just realizing that all my actions that I do or don't do impact my environment and the world. And this is more often than not one of the biggest fears of Mr. Nice Guys, because that'll completely shatter their way of operating, which is, they're the victims. They are the ones who find everyone else in the wrong. And this is why the manipulation patterns come out that Mr. Nice Guys often do in the background. So taking responsibility is a huge shift. And at the same time, the biggest antidote to that state of being a Mr. Nice Guy, taking responsibilities.
Yeah. It's a powerful one, isn't it? It feels like linked to agency. Everything comes down to agency. I think sometimes with Ben, because when we take responsibility, we also take power. We also acknowledge ourselves as powerful.
Yes. Well, we basically exit the victim mentality, the victim loop, because when you take responsibility, you realize, oh shit, I am actually in control of my life. I am the designer of my life. I'm not the player. No, I'm actually like the creator. And that's for many scary, because they're used to kind of bouncing off whatever hits them in life. So instead of reacting, the good man starts to respond to life and create it eventually, and that is power.
And I'm curious if we haven't touched on the area of kind of sexuality. Actually, I think this is a really important aspect of where the nice guy kind of struggles. What do you see as the relationship to sexuality for the good man in comparison to the nice guy?
Good question. Again, coming back, I agree with you when you say agency. It's a lot about agency. So that means many things. One of them in sexuality, in connection to sexuality, is number one, really understanding, especially in the moment, where and how sexual energy leaks into the space. And that can be a man walking down the street and seeing a woman, and the response to that woman can be, let's say, a healthy way for me to see a beautiful woman in the street and really like, wow, just admiring that beauty, and still have that energy in the self contained. So there's an element of self-containment, admiring the beauty, admiring what he sees, without, if I can visualize it, almost like something is coming out of your body and needing something, wanting something from that person. So that would be one element. And especially women, they're very much attuned to men around them. And more often than not, women feel safe or unsafe. With a man who knows when does the energy leaks. And I've seen it many, many times in retreats. I'm also a professional dancer, so I've danced with 10 plus thousands of women over my dancer career. So I talk to so many women, they say like they know exactly in the moment if the man is like wanting something from them. Like, is he moving in a specific way or connecting in a specific way because he eventually wants something from her? Okay, so that's an important element. Second one would be around sexual energy. I would say the man, as you define a good man or a mature man, he would know how to slow down, especially moments of intimacy. Like truly to slow himself down, slow the moment, slow his breath. Therefore, slow down your partner in many ways, and really know how to allow that energy to move with her, not leak, not take. That type of man, especially for a woman, is a very important type of man that can support her own healing, which I see in a lot of women, because as you probably know, a lot of women have been or sexually harassed or so on and so on. So a man who can contain that energy, slow it down, and really be aware of it is healing deeply for her. So I would say sexuality work is one of the top of the list work for men to dive into.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think a lot of men, in terms of sexuality work, we go at it from like a technique perspective, like, because we're coming from the fear of the common men's fear of not lasting long enough, not being big enough, staying hard enough is usually the initial concerns. But actually the sexuality work that runs much deeper is like, can we be okay with our own sexual energy running for our body? How much sexual shame do we carry and do we project into the moment? Like, can we be of a woman's arousal? How can we be present in the moment with a woman in the moments that matter as things are developing, instead of kind of losing ourselves to either kind of anxiety and fear, or the other way, which I think isn't always spoken about as widely, is like lust and fantasy, which is equally quite dangerous. I think it's incredibly dangerous where we find ourselves in lust and fantasy. Like that's the kind of deeper work that a lot of men really miss when it comes to kind of sex and sexuality.
Yeah, and this is why we also have so much porn addiction. It's basically a process of stepping out of yourself, not again lack of tracking, not being aware of what's happening within you, stepping out of yourself and using external influence to kind of play with your chemistry, and eventually becomes an addiction and so on, which hurts a lot of men and eventually their relationships. So one of the practices that I do with men, we have this process of 4 to 6 weeks, which is the first porn is completely forbidden to begin with, week by week, to step out of that field. And also when they sell pleasure, I invite them to practice to remove also mind porn, ideas of their partners or other women, and just to simply, literally reconnect with your own body. So practices, I'll use this something as an example. What I give them as practice, just can you hold like this object? Can you practice to activate your senses, for example, in your hand, and just touch an object and feel the texture, feel the shape, and just start to literally realize what are you touching, how are you connecting to that thing. And it's fascinating how I had men who were struggling with premature ejaculation their whole lives. Literally 4 weeks in, they would say, I had 2-3 hours of making love with my partner for the first time in my life by simply getting rid of porn, so that kind of dopamine hit, resensitizing your body with touch and understanding what I'm actually touching. Like, can I actually focus on that sensation while still staying present in my own body? To then going to more deeper pleasure practices with their genitals and so on, while containing the energy, not allowing that energy just to spill out through ejaculation, but just really, can I slow down my own nervous system? And again, practice that again and again. 4 weeks, I'm often surprised what can change very quickly. And again, the woman can feel that. and then she can open up more pleasure comes in, more connection. So yeah, there's a lot of power in self-containment, especially around sexual energy for men.
Yeah, so much power. We don't even realize we've just been spraying this energy around, leaking it on the streets at night in our bedrooms. We don't even realize.
Yeah.
I want to jump into one final question, actually, and this is about masculinity, and actually still in the container of kind of nice guy and good man. We're in this era now where masculinity is being questioned, quite rightfully, I think. So for a good man, what's his relationship like to his own masculinity?
Well, maybe what I'm literally doing now with your question, I notice my system wants to slow down a little bit. I notice my breath wants to kind of widen. And by doing that, right away, my nervous system feels more grounded. My body also feels more grounded. I become more present with you. So I would say a good man is practicing presence, moment to moment. And I would say this is one of the main practices that I would give to men, like practice to be present. And more often than not, slowing down would be the bridge to that. And if only that it's not a little, if only that aspect would be practiced, I would say, through the rest of my life, I think that would be definitely the one, to really be in the moment, present in the moment, in my body, in my mind, in my spirit. And again, in this moment, without the thoughts of the future and the anxiety of it, without the regrets of the past, to really just be here now, I would say that would solve a lot of real or imaginary problems that we have in our lives. And it's felt. It's truly felt when a person is like that. It's felt even through the screen, in the space, in our families. It creates safety. It builds trust. So I would say presence would be one of the main elements of a mature, kind, loving, good man. So this would be my, I guess, also invite to be more of that. Yeah, I'll keep it at that.
No, I love that. I love that. In a world that we live in with battles of notifications and phones and all these things trying to take our attention, the practice of presence isn't always easy. There's also one that really can sharpen us. Like I said, it can allow us to be more deeply with people, with ourselves, with what's going on with us, tracking, as you've talked about before, our own fears and worries, anxieties. Because of our presence, we just don't notice. We'd be distracted thinking about the future, worrying about the past, and things come up and hijack us.
Yeah, especially in connection to masculinity, what masculinity is, there's a lot of definitions. Mine is a bit more esoteric, mixed with modern aspects, which is presence, truly knowing how to ground your body, and also a word which I love to use, which is containment. So if we would look at nature, you can see the masculine and feminine dance very clearly. So what containment looks like would be the banks of a river and the mountain, which would represent the masculine. And the river that freely moves instead of spills would be the feminine. But for her to do that, she needs that masculine aspect. So containment would be, I would say, essential attribute of masculinity, to be able to contain your own emotions, the emotions of your environment, of your sexual energy we spoke about, of your aggression, and so on and so on. So I said a good man is a man who knows how to contain. A good masculine man is a safe man, a grounded man, a present man. And we definitely need more of that.
We definitely do. We definitely do. Oh, Nemanja, it's been such a pleasure talking to you today, hearing your wisdom and feeling you as well as a man. It's been such a pleasure to sit here today and talk to you. I'm sure the listeners are wondering where they can hear more from you, what you've got coming up in terms of how people can kind of work with you or join anything you're creating.
Well, my name, Nemanja Sonero, it's my website, nemanjasonero.com, Instagram, Nemanja Sonero, Facebook, the same. I also work with an organization in Amsterdam. It's called the Gathering of Men. So it's Oscar, Yuka, and me. So we hold this container for men in Amsterdam, but we also travel around Europe holding events for men, where we have regular gatherings in Amsterdam every week. Normally we have one or two. We have a community of men that's growing beautifully. We have our own space now. So we have co-working days, we have events. So it's literally our space, which is a huge leap. And so I work there, and we have different events in person, and I'm in charge for those, but also I work a lot online. So I have a lot of clients from all over the world, and I want to be available for men from New Zealand, Australia, USA, Europe, and so on. So my main work at this moment is one-on-one with coaching men, also coaching couples, men and women. And I have my online masculine alchemy mastermind, which I do twice a year. It's a 6-month journey for men, exactly working on these topics we've been talking about: masculine, feminine, leadership, knowing your shadows, and so on, which I'm running already for, I think, 7 years already. And I really love this program. Really brought a lot of amazing things to men. So besides this, I traveled to festivals around Europe and the world for a long time. Now a bit less because I have a little daughter, so I cannot be out of the house too much. But yeah, I'm traveling. I'm doing online work. So whoever wants to dive deeper into this or to be supported himself or in the relationship, I'm here for you.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. So needed, right? So needed. And I will speak to the listener and say, this is one of those episodes that we all know a nice guy, right? Maybe it's you're listening. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's a friend of yours. A nice guy who really thinks he's a good man and wonders why he's not getting what he wants in his life. Maybe he hasn't got the relationship or the job or the joy and happiness. And I think this is the perfect episode to share with a man and say, hey, this is going to give you some pointers about what's missing, where you're lacking in creating your life as the way you want it to be. So please do share it around and send it over to a man. And I'll finish up as I always do by saying thank you to the listeners for listening. Thank you to Nemanja for his wisdom today. And I will see you next week. I'll say ciao, ciao.